If you want some FIFA 23 coins, please check out MMOXP.com. Their link is down in the description. They're fast, cheap and reliable, and if you use code Rema you can get yourself a 5% discount. So what's up guys, my name's Ash and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video guys, I've got some custom tactics and player instructions for the 4-1-2-1-2 narrow. This is the third of the three primary formations that I use in this game, but just before we get into today's video, I'd very much appreciate it if you guys could drop this video a thumbs up, as it does really help with the YouTube search algorithm. Also subscribe to the channel if you are new so you never miss out on any videos like this one, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you are notified when a video is posted. And with all that aside guys, let's get right into today's video. Okay guys, so starting off with the custom tactics, for the defensive style I like to use balance. This is the same for every formation I use, and the reason that I like balance so much is because it gives you the most control in your defense. You know, you can press when you want to press, you can be more conservative when you need to be, and you just get that greater overall balance, which is very important I think. Some people like to use pressure tactics, but I'm not a big fan because I feel like it restricts you a lot of the time, and if you can master balance you do become a better defender. However, if you want to use your pressure tactics, that's absolutely fine, but I do suggest getting used to balance if you possibly can. Now moving on to the defensive width guys, because this is a game where narrow dominates, you know, people like to play through the middle a lot, it's important to have a more narrow width. So for that reason we've got our width on 40. This is so we can cover the central areas primarily, but let's say somebody does want to go down the wing like your opponent, you do have the coverage of the wings to cut the ball out there as well. So it primarily defends in a narrow manner, but when you do need to defend the wide areas you are able to do so. Now moving on to depth, I currently have this on 65. The reason being is after the patch, when you do tackle players there is a greater chance that you do actually retain the ball. So if you can win the ball high up the pitch, you can create a lot of quick attacks, which is what the 4-1-2-1-2 is good for. So it's nice to try and win the ball high up the pitch, which is why a high depth does help. You do obviously have to be careful with the through balls, you know, you have to track those runs when somebody tries to play an over the top through ball, but if you can manage that you will have a greater time with a higher depth. That being said, if you're not comfortable with using a higher depth, you can obviously lower this to whatever you want, but I am really enjoying using a higher depth. Now for build-up play guys, I'm currently using fast build-up. The reason being is it goes hand in hand with my higher depth. So when we win the ball higher up the pitch, we use fast build-up so our players are constantly moving around very quickly to catch our opponent by surprise, because the 4-1-2-1-2 is a very aggressive formation. So if you can win the ball high up the pitch, you're going to be able to create a lot of chances just based on the amount of passing options you have. So using fast build-up really utilizes the aggressive nature of the formation, and I really do like having that. That being said, if you do feel more comfortable with balance because fast build up is too fast for you, that's absolutely fine, but I have been really liking fast build up myself. Now moving on to chance creation, as always guys, I do suggest using direct passing. The reason being is direct passing is the only option which will actually, you know, make your attackers penetrate the defensive line. It's the only setting which will make your attackers move in a dynamic motion. If you look at the diagram in the bottom right hand corner of the screen, you can see the white dots, which are your attackers. They're constantly moving around to create those passing chances, whereas if you look at something like balance, they're very static and they don't bother the defense that much. So I do very much suggest using direct passing. Now moving on to the attacking width, because this is a narrow formation, it makes sense that you want to attack in a primarily narrow manner. So I have this on 35 because this also works very well with fast build up. By having a narrower width with fast build up, your players are nice and compact, they're very close together, so these short fast passes are very easy to pull off. If you had a higher width, it might be more difficult to utilize the quick passes because your players are further apart. So I do suggest using a lower width, and when we do need to get extra width in the formation, the player instructions will help us out with that, but we'll get onto that later. Moving on to players in box, I have this bang on the middle in 5. So yeah, the reason for this is I like to get some players into the box, but I don't want to overcommit my whole team. By having this on 5, we do get some players into the box, but at the same time some of our team is holding back in case our opponent tries to counter attack us. So it's very balanced, but it's down to preference. Corners and free kicks are also down to preference. I currently just have this on 2, so I have a few players into the box for crosses and that from set pieces, but at the same time we have a lot of players hanging back in case our opponent tries a counter counter-attack, but if you want to up this or lower it, it's completely up to you. For the players you want to use, guys, because it's a 2-striker formation, you do have a bigger variety than you would in a 1-striker formation like the 4-2-3-1. The reason being is that there is 2 of these players. So you could use 2 lengthy players if you want, you could use 2 explosive players, or you could do what I do where I just use a bit of a balance between my 2 strikers. So I have Robbie Keane, who is a bit more of a clinical finisher with the 5-star weak foot, the great shooting stats, you know, somebody that's going to finish those chances. Then I have a bit more of a technical dribbler player in Di Maria as the 2nd striker, you know, with the 5-star skills, just because it gives us a bit of a balance in the striking positions. I feel like if I use 2 lengthy players in the striker position, for example, I wouldn't be able to create many chances because of the clunky nature of the players. So I like to just have like a bit of a balance between the 2 strikers where I go for more of a finisher and then more of a technical player to actually, you know, help create as well. But you guys can do what you want there. Moving on to the cam, you just want a technical player, somebody that is able to dribble, shoot, pass, you know, do a bit of everything in the attack, because these are your main creative, this is your main creative player in the team, as he's the only cam. So you just want a nice technical player. A 5-star weak foot is obviously you know, beneficial, but it's not a requirement. You just need somebody that's agile, somebody that can do a bit of everything in this cam position. Now for the 3 midfielders, starting off with the CDM, you're going to want a defensive player. This is pretty self-explanatory, but you're going to want somebody that stays back, breaks up the play, and has very good defensive stats. The ideal work rate for this position is a medium-high work rate, but for example, this version of Vieira is a medium-medium, but because his defensive stats are so good, it doesn't matter. So just go for somebody that is very good defensively, and if you can get a medium-high work rate on top of that, then brilliant. Now, moving on to the right centre mid, this is a more box-to-box centre mid, so I'm using Park Ji-sung, and the most important part of this position is having somebody with very well-rounded stats, you know, so they can attack, defend, you know, good stamina, and a high work rate, because they're going to be attacking and they're going to be defending, so the high work rate fits that role perfectly. Now for the left centre mid, I actually suggest you guys using more of an attacking player, so I'm using Phil Foden, but the important part about using an attacking player here is I suggest getting somebody with a high work rate, so for example Phil Foden or Bernardo Silva. You're going to see why this makes sense in the player instructions, but you don't need to worry about their defensive stats too much. The high work rate just really helps them out in this position. Just trust me on that. Now moving on to the fullbacks, I like to go for a bit of a balance between my 2 fullbacks, but you guys have freedom, you can do whatever you want. I use 1 attacking fullback in Hernandez and 1 more defensive fullback in Walker, but if you wanted to use 2 defensive fullbacks or, you know, 2 attacking fullbacks, that's completely fine, it's up to you. Moving on to the centre backs and goalkeeper, these just need to be as meta as possible, and yeah, I'm just using Chesney for chemistry. For player instructions, guys, on the left striker, I said Di Maria is like my more technical player, so I just have him on stay central and then I leave everything else alone. I even have him on mixed attack because I don't just want this guy to run in behind, you know. He's a bit more of a creator, so sometimes I need him to sit a little bit deeper so we could even play in Robbie Keane. You know, it allows them to create a bit better and it allows the team to flow a bit more, especially with the tactics that we have. The only important thing is stay central because we don't need this player drifting off to the wings, as you'll see what we do with our fullbacks. On the right striker, as I said, Robbie Keane is my more of a finisher striker, so I have stay central and get him behind. This is just so he's making those dangerous runs, so he's always in those striking areas. And for example, because I've got Di Maria on mixed attack, Di Maria might sit behind Keane and then play in the through ball to Keane. It just gives us more passing options and it allows us to create a lot more chances as a result. And again, stay central because we don't need him to cover the wings. We've already got players that will be able to do that. We need him to be in the central areas to finish off the chances. Now for the cam, I actually have come back on defense, and this is because this formation is actually going to defend as a 4-4-2. So by having Chiesa on comeback on defense, he's going to come back to defend as a right mid. So our midfield setup will be Phil Foden as left mid, Vieira as the left centre mid, Park Ji-sung as the right centre mid, and then Chiesa as a right mid. So it just gives us better defensive support because, you know, if we defend in a 4-1-2-1-2, it can be too narrow and it can be too easy for your opponent to walk through. So having it defend as a 4-4-2 makes it a lot stronger in defense. Now, moving on to the box-to-box centre mid, the right centre mid, we have stay back while attacking and cover centre. Now, I know I said he's a box-to-box centre mid, but I still like having him on stay back while default. Now, the reason for this is, you know, because we're going to commit our fullbacks, as you will see, it's important that we always have at least a little bit of cover by default. So we have him on stay back while attacking, and whenever we want to take him forward, we will just do that ourselves manually by triggering a run. So just by default, it will be on stay back as it just gives us extra support. And we have him on cover centre, so we will defend as one of the central midfielders. Now, moving on to the CDM, we just have stay back while attacking and cover centre. This is pretty self-explanatory, but we want this player to stay back because he's defensive, and we want him to cover the central areas as well. There's not much to say about the CDM, but yeah, it's very basic instructions there. Now for the left centre mid, the more attacking player, we just completely leave him alone, and the most important part is having him on cover wing, because this will make him defend as a left mid in a 4-4-2, which is why I said the high work rate is super beneficial, because when we lose the ball, the high defensive work rate means he's going to transition very quickly into that left mid position, and when we win the ball back, his high attacking work rate means he's going to join the attack very quickly as well. So it's very nice to have that. But yeah, we just leave him on completely balanced stats because settings, because we want him to do a bit of everything. Now lastly, for the fullbacks, I have them on balance, attack and overlap. The reason for this is the 4-1-2-1-2 is a very narrow formation, and when you play against decent players, it's very important that you get extra width, otherwise you can find it very difficult to create chances. So by having them on having the fullbacks on balance, attack and overlap, they're going to go up to the two strikers, so we're almost going to have 4 in attack, and it's going to give us extra width. So it's going to be very aggressive on the attack, and it's going to be very easy to create chances. The overlap setting means they will always, you know, create extra width instead of underlapping your team and staying narrow. So it's very important that you guys put that on. If this is too aggressive for you, you can just switch them both to stay back while attacking, so you do have extra defensive support. But I will warn you, the attack might be a little bit underwhelming if you do that. But yeah, they are my custom tactics and player instructions for the 4-1-2-1-2. If you guys have enjoyed this video, found it useful, I'd very much appreciate it if you could drop it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you are new so you never miss out on any videos like this one, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you're notified when a video is posted. With all that aside, guys, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.